All right, last chapter. This is chapter 16. This is focusing on your sense organs. So this one's actually going to be, at least in my opinion, a lot more fun than some of the other stuff we've done. So actually looking at your actual brain function, that kind of cool stuff. Okay, so in order for our body to detect stuff, it has different receptors. So we're going to focus on them and see how they actually are able to take the stimulation and be able to tell our brain what the heck is going on. So the process of doing so is called transduction. This is conversion of one form of energy, such as light or touch or heat or sound, into a nerve signal, basically converting it into something the brain can understand. So in this process, you have what's called a receptor potential. So just like we had our cell membrane potential, so we're going to have a change in the electrical voltage, and that stimulus is going to cause that change, and so therefore you're going to generate a nerve signal to our central nervous system. So once we actually are able to detect something, we have a sensation for it, which is our subjective awareness of the stimulus. So this isn't exactly as whatever the object is, it's just what our brain interprets it as. So later we'll talk about, for example, you have a blind spot in your eye. So even though you're looking around the room or you're looking wherever, part of what you're seeing is your brain making up crap. So I'll talk about some other stuff where your brain makes up crap because it's just like, something's supposed to be there. So I'm going to fill in the gap. Okay, so with our awareness of the stimulus, part of it's filtered out in the brainstem. We're not always attentive to everything that's going on. So for example, if let's say you're sitting under a fan right now and you can hear the whirring of the blades of the fan or your air conditioner or your kids outside and you're like, oh my gosh, would they calm down? Okay, eventually you're probably going to filter that noise out. So you're not actually always attentive to everything. So there are some signals that don't require a conscious awareness, such as pH and body temperature, but there's still a receptor for them. So basically it's kind of what you are actually aware of. And again, it just depends on what your brain decides to, this is important enough for me to pay attention. And then there's some stuff where it's like, whatever. You're still getting the information in, but your brain just doesn't pay attention to it. Okay, so we have different receptors for different types for the modality, the location, intensity, and duration. So 4 different types of information that are coming from our receptor. So the first one is the modality, which is the type of it. So is it vision? Is it hearing? Is it taste? Is it touch? Is it your sight? Whatever the initial stimulus is, there's receptors for them, and that receptor is going to be able to convert that stimulus into a action potential or a series of action potentials to tell the brain what's going on. So get the brain to understand. Next one is location. So this is helping your brain map out certain things, such as touch, which is very important. So in different parts of our body, the receptive field size, so how large pixelation of information that you're getting, is different. So if we took the same section of skin on the back where we don't have to be actually very sensitive versus at your fingers where you're touching stuff, so you need a little bit more differing of what you're touching, you're going to have a whole lot more neurons, so a smaller size pixel or smaller bits of information for that touch information. So with the smaller receptor field size, it allows for what's called 2-point touch discrimination. So here on the lady's back, we have a protractor and we're poking her. For the larger receptor field size, because all of it's going into the same neuron, it's a whole lot harder for her to detect that she's getting poked in 2 different locations. So as long as you're doing it at the same time, you can't tell the difference because all of it's going into that one neuron. Versus here where you have smaller pixels or smaller receptive field size, then you're able to determine the difference between the 2 points because you have information for this poke going on this neuron while the information from this poke is going on this neuron. So they're specific information, and it's going to a specific location in your brain, so you're able to map out the whatever you're touching. So that's how you're able to touch something and feel the different textures. It's kind of like the difference between like a really old TV and high definition TV. So we have more pixels, like Minecraft here on this side, and then like one of your like a really high end games with, you know, having to have a graphics card to actually be able to play the stupid thing. So a lot more pixels, able to get more detail out of what you're touching. Another feature of your receptors, is, so we're still on location, so sensory projection, so tells your brain where your stimulation is occurring, as well as what's called a projection pathway. So sometimes in your brain, I think we covered this, I don't remember. I took a long break in between the other chapters and chapter 15, or chapter 16, well, actually both of them, and where your brain ends up. So for example, I think I covered this, the sensory and motor homunculus, that's where the touch or pain signals are going. So knowing that kind of mapping, that also helps your brain know what location. Another thing is intensity. So which fibers are sending the signal? So that tells your brain the stimulus intensity. How many fibers are doing so? So if you recruit more fibers because it's a more intense or stronger stimulus, then your brain knows, oh, this is something more than just your regular deal. And then how fast the fibers are firing. So, for example, if I touch my hand nice and lightly, then I'm only going to send a slow signal to the brain. So we're going to have a slow rhythm of action potentials because it's a soft touch. If I pinch my skin and cause pain, that's going to be a whole lot faster. And the brain is like, oh, okay, that's a very strong stimulus, so I get it. Plus, you're also going to add in your pain receptors into that stimulus response. And so your brain pairs up strong stimulus, and I'm getting some pain signals from them. So this is super strong. And let me get my hand out the way. The last receptor property is duration. So how long is it lasting? So earlier I was talking about your brain adapting to stuff like, blocking out certain noises, the feel of your clothes on your body. Again, some stuff you have phasic receptors. They're going to adapt quickly to something. Eventually they tell your brain, oh, there's something new. And then over time it's kind of like, okay, that's not new anymore, whatever. So for example, smells. So sometimes you've gone to grandma's house and you're like, Jesus, if she don't get rid of the mothballs. Okay, eventually you, get used to the smell. And then even though it are mothballs, as long as the scent doesn't change, so you don't have a change in the smell, which again, your phasic receptors would be like, oh, new smell. And then you got to go back to the mothballs. Oh my. Okay. Hair movement. So if you have a little bug crawling on your skin, eventually you'll adapt to that. As same thing with what's called cutaneous pressure. So your skin, so the feel of your clothes, the feel of your butt sitting on the seat right now, if you're sitting, all of that, if you have a butt, all of that eventually will be phased out. So kind of like, oh my gosh, it's just a phase, short term. A tonic receptor is going to adapt more slowly. So you're going to continue to get a signal to tell the brain. And the reason why, for example, your proprioceptors, your brain needs to know where your body is at all times. So if something happens and you need to make a movement and need to make an adjustment, maintaining to know where you are in space, which is what our proprioception is, your body needs to know where are you. So just kind of like how you're driving and you're maintaining focus on all your different mirrors, knowing where are you compared to all your other cars. So if you do need to, for example, change lanes, you know where you are, as in, oh, I remember seeing that red car in my rear view mirror, but now I don't see it. And then you're like, okay, making sure that you pay attention. Where was that red car? And you're like, oh, I don't see it, in my side view mirror. So I don't see in my back view mirror, but I see in my side view mirror now. So I know where it is. It's like, okay, let me wait and let them pass, and then I can move. So knowing where you are helps with that. So some of your normal patterns of your body moving, it's because your brain knows, okay, your muscle has moved so much, and so I need to go a little bit further to finish off this normal sizing of steps. That's why sometimes when you're walking or doing some stuff, your brain can just be like, okay, just take over, easily, quickly do it, and you don't really have to think about what you're doing. Okay, so let's look at our receptors. So again, different types by modality. So thermoreceptors for heat, photoreceptors, that's your eyeballs, nociceptors, those are pain, chemoreceptors, taste and smell, and mechanoreceptors for movement. There's also classifying them by stimuli, so whether it's on the outside or inside of the body, and then of course our proprioceptors for our body position. Some are distributed all around the body, like touch, or some are specific, so like vision, hearing, equilibrium, which is still in your head, ear region, and then taste and smell. Okay, so let's focus on the general senses. So these are just spread around the entire body. This isn't on the test, but I'm just showing you your different types of tissue endings, how they're getting their information. Some are protected, some are free. Nope. Okay. Yeah, I'm over here looking at it again. So this one, like, for example, different receptors. So part of our proprioception, knowing where we are in space. So knowing how the muscles as well as the tendons are moving. So part of our general senses, so all around the body, is pain. So if you ever stepped on a Lego, you know what pain is. So pain is a form of discomfort. This is something telling the brain there's a possibility of damage or potential damage, and so you're going to have evasive action, basically not do what's causing you the pain. So the receptors for pain are your nociceptors, and they have different speeds, one because of an actual injury, and then a slower pain, which is more diffuse type of pain. So this is kind of like there's a possibility of injury, you might want to move, versus there's actually injury, move your butt. Hopefully my other professors are gone home and I'm not just being super loud right now. Okay, so where are we getting pain from? So the somatic pain is coming from skin, muscle, bones, and joints. Visceral pain from the internal organs. Now, even though we aren't able to pay attention to it, we're still going to get a idea of where our visceral pain is coming from in general. One way we're able to stimulate pain is not only from the receptors, but also because injured tissues are going to release chemicals that are going to stimulate those pain fibers. And so again, telling the brain, hey, there's a problem. So 2 ways we get pain. So the first one is from the head region. So again, going through our brain stem. So our first neuron is going to detect the stimulus. So there's our receptor going to the area of the medulla in our brain stem, then going to the thalamus, which is also in our brain stem, and then finally going on to our cortex, so our brain knows exactly where it is. Now here with these 2 different stops, that's where you're going to have a little bit of filtering of that information. So not all of your pain signals actually go to your brain. So there's some stuff you just don't detect. From below the head, you have 3 different tracks. So from your spinal cord to your thalamus, so that's most of your skin, muscle, bones, joints, somatic pain signal. From your spinal cord to your reticular formation, so earlier we talked about awareness with that. So that is your visceral pain, like organs, and then your emotional and behavioral reactions to pain. Oops. And then the gracile fasciculus is visceral pain, just another pathway for it. Be good. Adjustment. There we go. Okay. Next. So this is just showing you your location. So here is our painful stimuli. They're touching a tack for some reason. So we have our receptor, our first neuron. We have some synapsing in the spinal cord area. We're going to the reticular formation and then the hypothalamus and limbic system. So dealing with part of our emotional response to pain, part of remembering, oh, don't touch the thumbtack. That's stupid. That's going to hurt. And then some of it goes to the thalamus. So the part of that is also going to gate out that information as well as with our reticular formation. And then finally going to our cortex in the brain where to get the information. So again, not all of this actually goes to your brain. For our visceral pain, this is also called referred pain. So since we are not normally paying attention to the going-ons of our organs, like we don't actually feel our heart beating, like the actual like beating of our heart. We don't feel our digestive system working. So when there is a pain signal, instead of us knowing that, okay, that's going to come in from my stomach, or that's definitely my heart, our brain gets confused. So because the pain signal from the heart also is synapsing onto the same neuron as the pain signal for example, this area of the chest where everything is red. So see the guy's grabbing his arm. The brain doesn't know exactly where that pain is coming from. It assumes it's coming from your skin, and so that's what it's going to tell you where that information is coming from, because again, you're not used to actually paying attention to your sensory information coming from your organs. So that's why, let's say if this guy's having a heart attack, a lot of times people will grab their chest or their left arm because that's where their brain is assuming that signal is coming from. So there's different areas where we have our referred pain or visceral pain, where we're getting that information. So like liver and gallbladder, again, is just where our brain thinks stuff is coming from. Heart attack region. Kidney is all of this yellow region. The appendix is roughly there. So that one is kind of where stuff is. Small intestines, where it would be your stomach. So that's why sometimes you get heartburn. It's kind of in that chest region there. So different areas of where your pain is coming from. And that's just where it feels like it is on your kind of where your brain is thinking the pain is coming from, because it's not used to paying attention to that. Okay. 17 minutes. Okay, we can do these last two slides. So with our pain, again, not all of that information is going to the brain. There are ways that our body can kill pain, and then there's other stuff that we can actually take in order to kill pain. So ways that our body kills pain. So something that kills pain or relieves the sensation of pain is called an analgesic. So like your Tylenols, your Advils, the stuff that your body makes to relieve pain, those are all called analgesics. So one type of pain reliever are called endogenous opioids. So if you remember the whole, opioid drug crisis, those are actually really strong painkillers that are at the level of being an actual addictive drug. People are taking that to, let's say, for example, even after a surgery. Sometimes they do give you really strong painkillers because you are in a lot of pain. But then sometimes some people actually get addicted to them because, maybe they took them too often because you are on a strict time schedule, or they just got addicted to it because that's just the way their body worked. So two opioids that we actually produce in the body are enkephalins, endorphins, and dynorphins. First one, the enkephalins, actually is more potent than morphine, but because of how little actually gets produced, it doesn't have that drug effect that a pharmacy opioid would produce. And then the other ones, we discovered them a little bit later, that they also help to kill off pain. So I know you've heard of an endorphin. So when you're in active mode, that actually helps to kill off pain so that you can continue to, if you're a runner and you're in a race and, I don't know, maybe you bang up your knee or something and you're still able to run. And then by the time you finish your race and you're calming back down, you're oh, my ankle. So all of these are going to help block your pain signal from getting to the brain. Another way to do that is called spinal gating. So this is in the level of your spinal cord. So there are some analgesic fibers that are in your brainstem, and they go down toward your reticular formation and help to block those pain signals from getting to the brain. You can activate it by either rubbing or massaging the injury. So again, sometimes, if you hit something and then you kind of rub it, basically you're confusing your brain, and your brain thinks you're just getting touched instead of you actually being in pain. Same thing when you hit your thumb with the hammer and then you do that little shaky thing with your hand. That's because you're trying to confuse your brain to think that the signal that it's getting from your hand is actually you just moving your hand around, when actually it's pain and you're just tricking your brain. And then also it can stimulate the release of those enkephalins, so get those endogenous opioids to relieve your pain signal. Okay, so we're going to start a new one for the next section because we're going on to our chemical senses of taste and smell.